every leader is a reader. And every committed reader is a potential leader. Every leader is a reader, because it's the engagement of the senses of others that makes him to make sense. That's why I've also propounded that every leader is a learner, and every committed learner is a potential leader. Abraham Lincoln said, "I don't think much of a man who is not wiser today than he was yesterday." Henry Ford said, "When you stop learning, you are old, whether at 20 or at 80. And when you keep learning, you are young, whether at 80 or at 20. He said the best thing to do is to keep your mind young. And through the art of learning, or a commitment to a lifelong learning. I walked into the office of Kenneth Hagin in 1997, and then here he was reading the book of T.L. Osborne. Reading. After writing all those books in his life, he was reading another author, 1997. He wasn't reading to post to us, because he was clearly our source of blessings and resources. But that was the book he was reading, 1997. 1997. Today you can find a lot of Christian books without references. There is no academic book of worth without cross references. If it doesn't have it, it doesn't hold water. So most of the things people propound don't have, they are not proven. They are mere hypotheses. They are not proven. So it's wisdom is not a cheap commodity. Always remind yourself of Job 28, 12 to 18. It's not a cheap commodity. It's the costliest treasure in all the world. Because it demands your time, it demands your energy, it demands your resources. I was away in America sometimes, and I bought books worth $9,600 at the time. And when I got home, my wife said, "What did you bring?" I said, "Come see." So I invited her to my library, and I opened the first box, books down. From the second one, books. I said, "What else?" I said, "That's all else." And then I humorously said, "You see, the content of these books can easily make me a manufacturer of the things I will have bought if I could understand them." Hello? That is sense of value. Your sense of value for knowledge is a great determinant of your leadership future. I will never buy a piece of suit in my life, 9,000. What will I do with it? I mean, who is looking at me? No need that. But if I buy books of 20,000 pounds, I feel good. I've said across nations, and Pastor Alba was in 2 or 3 of those nations, that you are either building a library or you are building a mortuary without knowing. Come on now. You are either building a library or you are building a mortuary without knowing. There are many mortuary builders today. They do not. There are people who have graduated from college, have never read any single literature in their life since they left. They just go to work and come back from work and watch TV and go to work, come back from work, watch TV and go to work. Great leaders end up as peasant workers because they cannot pay the price of what makes a leader. Please note from here, wisdom is not a cheap commodity. It's the costliest commodity, but of greatest value. The costliest commodity and of greatest value. Let me share with you the story of two great people that have inspired me a lot. The one of them is Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin had only 2-year formal education. How many years? 2 years. Only 2-year formal education. And this young man was an apprentice in a Princeton shop. And so in those days, they used to give them money for food. This is your lunch money, go and eat. He would save the money for lunch today, lunch tomorrow, until it's enough to buy a book he has seen. So he will go fasting for knowledge. Fasting for what? So he was doing without lunch to buy books. Is that you? And suddenly, the lion in him began to rise. Today, Benjamin Franklin is a great name in American history. Benjamin Franklin founded the University of Pennsylvania, which is still rated number 15th university in the world as a 2008 rating. It was founded 1786. Benjamin Franklin developed himself to become a scientist. He founded the thunder arrestor science, engineering. He invented it. Thunder was killing people for free. He sat down and found a way of tapping that energy and earthing it. 2 years from education. You know how many years you have gone to school in your life? Now listen. Benjamin Franklin founded a daily newspaper, a tabloid. Benjamin Franklin became one of the foremost American diplomats. He single-handedly negotiated the French government support for the revolution. I hope I'm speaking well in London. That was what empowered the American forces to win. Today, there's a Benjamin Franklin Day in America. There are only 365 or 360 days in a year. They gave a day to one man who died about 300 years ago. That is the treasure of wisdom. It is not common sense, it's a costly sense. Come on, say costly. Wisdom is not common sense, it's costly sense. Very costly sense. Very costly sense. Benjamin Franklin read his way into greatness. He read his way into leadership. He wasn't waiting and wishing for it, he was working at it. How can someone with a 2-year formal education found a university that is still relevant today? From 1786. Oh, this is a very lazy generation. We just lay by and waiting for things to happen. We are killed by pleasure. Killed by pleasure. Think of Michael Faraday. How many have heard about Michael Faraday? Now, I'm talking about these folks because they are believers. But they did not abuse the faith. Most of us are abusing the faith. I said, God, come and cook for me. Thank you, Jesus. Cook for me now. God, drive me to work. I don't feel like driving today. That's faith abuse. Michael Faraday was a lab. Now, let me tell you a story. He also had a 2-year formal education. I noted some of these things in my book, Winning Wisdom. Now, you see, Michael Faraday was also a printing apprentice. It was a booming business in their days, so people learned how to be a printer. So he was there. But every time scientists exhibited their experiment, in those days, they were going about not watching film and videos and movies like today. It was a knowledge era. Come on, say knowledge era. Scientists will come in and exhibit the experiment. People pay to enter to watch. Michael Faraday was paying to enter. Small boy, what will he do with science? Now, there was this great physicist in his time. They call him Humphrey Davis. Humphrey Davis was a professor. And then Michael Faraday went to one of those exhibitions and took note. Now, for him to take note with only 2 years of education, he must have equipped himself. To even understand the professor, he must have equipped himself. I mean, understand what I'm saying? Now, Michael Faraday binded the notes and sent it to this professor, just to satisfy his printing and then all that, how much he enjoyed the lecture. So one time, a time came when the lab attendant of this professor left. And this man needed a lab attendant. Then he remembered a boy gave him a binded note of his lecture one time. He said, this boy may be interested in being a lab attendant. So he rode on his horseback to trace the address. And he found Michael Faraday. Would you mind being my lab attendant? Oh, with all pleasure. So Michael Faraday was a lab attendant who grew to become a world-class physicist. Now, listen to me. In his lifetime, Humphrey David began to be envious of the intellectual capacity of Michael Faraday. In fact, his biographer said he was reasoning more logically than Humphrey Davis. Well, to cut the long story short, you know the story if you're in the sciences, how great a name Michael Faraday made for himself in the field of science. Michael Faraday was not only a believer, he was also a preacher. But sold out to an undying quest for knowledge, and so earned his place in history. We don't talk of wisdom without knowledge. Now, let me say this. Wisdom is the principal raw material for the making of leaders, and knowledge is the principal raw material for the making of wisdom. So, leaders are made of applied knowledge. Come and say applied knowledge.